Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the BRC Workshop Hour. This is our third ever session, so it means a lot that you're here. This workshop is being presented to you by the Brain Resource Creation or BRC Department of Simply Neuroscience. And the purpose of these workshops is to share some neuroscience knowledge with you all. And throughout this hour, two BRC members, Brittany and Yulan, will be presenting their workshops on the main cells of the central nervous system and the connection between your brain and your gut, respectively. Each presentation will be about 30 minutes long, and both will provide time for you all to ask questions and do some fun activities. Also, these presentations will be recorded, so if you want to see this content again, there will be an opportunity for you to do so on Simply Neuroscience's YouTube channel. Without further ado, I'll now introduce our first presenter, Brittany. So Brittany is a third-year university student. She's interested in all fields of neuroscience and hopes to one day work as a neurologist. She's been involved with Simply Neuroscience for about 3 years now. And Brittany is currently a content creator at BRC and also a writer in the writing department of Simply Neuroscience. A couple of fun facts about her is that she has a pet hamster and enjoys photography. So she enjoys photography as well. Okay, Brittany, whenever you're ready.
All right, thank you. As was previously stated, my name is Brittany, and today I'm going to be teaching you about the main cells of the central and peripheral nervous systems. So the nervous system as a whole integrates information from our 5 senses, takes it in, and allows us to understand and respond to it. The nervous system is also responsible for coordinating with the endocrine system to allow us to respond to changes in our internal and external environments, combining information from both the outside of the body and the inside of the body to show us how our world is around us and respond accordingly. So the central nervous system and peripheral nervous system respond to 2 divisions of the nervous system. The central nervous system is the brain and spinal cord, where all the big stuff happens, from what we normally think of as big brain stuff like cognition and memory. You have the peripheral nervous system, which is all the nervous system outside of the brain and spinal cord. This is more responsible for stuff like muscle contraction and your heart rate and things like that that are not necessarily considered the normal brain activities. So the peripheral nervous system is further divided into different subdivisions. And these pictures here kind of showcase the difference for the one showing you the brain and spinal cord and the one showing you the peripheral nervous system. So I know these divisions are a little bit confusing, so I'll try and break it down a little bit more for you. We have the central nervous system, which consists of the brain and spinal cord. Again, this controls all the big stuff like cognition. And we have the peripheral nervous system, which consists of the somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system revolves around all things that you can voluntarily control, so things like muscles and things that you have actual control over. Your autonomic nervous system involves things that you cannot control, such as your heart rate. You have your sympathetic nervous system as a part of the autonomic nervous system, and this is what's responsible for fight or flight, exciting your heart rate, exciting everything to get you ready for potential danger. And another part of the autonomic nervous system is the parasympathetic nervous system. This calms the body down and lets it know that there is no danger so that you can focus on digesting your food and then other vital living things that you need to do outside of fleeing danger. So does anybody have any questions?
And also, if you don't have any questions right now, feel free to put questions in chat throughout the presentation and Brittany can get to them as she wishes. All right, but if we don't have any questions right now, we can move on.
Okay, so now that we've covered what the nervous system is in general and its divisions, now we're going to talk about the actual cells that make it up. So the main cell of the nervous system is the neuron. Neurons are able to communicate with other neurons through electrical and chemical signals. It's actually rather fascinating. They are some of the most coolest cells in your body. Might be a little bit biased because I study neuroscience, but I think they're pretty cool. Pictured here is neurons in the central nervous system in a section called the hippocampus. And these are forming what we call the dentate gyrus. This structure is really interesting because it's one of the few places in an adult animal brain where neurogenesis, or the formation of new neurons, occurs. So neurons are your oldest and longest cells. Some can actually be up to 1 meter long. And they make up the functional unit of behavior, controlling really almost everything you do. They also are very specialized, and they lose their ability to replicate following specialization. So unfortunately, once your neuron dies, they're unable to reform new neurons. Again, there's very few places in the brain where neurogenesis can occur. So yeah, as you can see in the past picture, neurons pass on electrical signals. And so we're going to go through the different parts of a neuron and how they all help with that. So neurons are made up of a soma, or a cell body. This is what you can think of as the cell itself, housing the organelles like the nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus. All those things allow the cell to function. If you don't know what all those individual organelles are, that's okay. Basically, just the cell body is the main action center and allows the cell to do metabolism and do all the things it needs to do. Coming off of the cell body normally is dendrites and an axon. Dendrites are extensions that contain cytoskeleton and mitochondria and are normally where you receive signals from other cells. You also have axons coming off of the cell body, and axons is normally a single cylindrical process, unlike dendrites, so there are normally many. Now, axons are pretty much similar to dendrites in that they contain cytoskeleton and mitochondria, but they also contain transport vesicles filled with neurotransmitter. These are chemicals that bind to the following cell and allow it to get the signal from the cell ahead of it. So you can think of the axon as the main conduction center. And the axon terminal is basically where those vesicles in the axon release those chemical signals and are responsible for neurotransmission. So again, in this picture, you can see dendrites coming off of a cell body. And you can also see a few other things here, other than just the axon as well. You can see that the axon is covered in something called a myelin sheath that has some holes in it called nodes of Ranvier. Basically, the electrical signal jumps from those holes within the myelin sheath. Myelin is basically just a fatty substance that wraps around them and allows the signal to pass much faster. I will get into what Schwann cells are a little later. So here's another view of basically the same things, just a little bit more of a clearer view of dendrites, the cell body, and an axon. So there are a few different types of neurons. Neurons can be categorized by the number of processes extending from the cell body, normally classified as unipolar, having one axon, or bipolar, having an axon and one dendrite. Or they can be multipolar neurons, having multiple dendrites in a single axon. Now for bipolar, the main reason that it's not multipolar is because you have one dendrite kind of extending toward opposite poles. That's a good question. So the most common type of neuron in the brain, if you want to go back to the last picture, is normally the ones that we call multipolar. So most cells in the brain normally consist of an axon and many dendrites, especially when you're talking about areas like the hippocampus. They have really, really fancy dendritic branches that are massive. So it's rather rare that you will see, especially in the central nervous system, something like a unipolar cell. Unipolar cells and these bipolar and pseudo-unipolar cells are normally in the peripheral nervous system, responding to other signals from receptors outside of the brain. Okay, I don't really cover mirror neurons in this presentation, but to tell you what they are relatively quickly, mirror neurons are neurons in your frontal cortex that are responsible for mimicking behavior of other people. For instance, you see me waving my hand, those mirror neurons are watching that behavior and priming you to mimic it. They're normally thought to help with empathy and understanding other people as part of like social connection. It's rather cool what these things can do. It's shown that deficits in them do lead to asocial behavior and antisocial behavior. So they do have relatively big roles in our social function, and kind of also probably helping in terms of understanding how like other people are doing something. So if you're watching somebody climb a tree, it'll show you like how to replicate that climbing motion so that you as well can climb a tree. Any other questions? Yes, that is very true. The reason that we consider yawns and laughing contagious is because mirror neurons. Those mirror neurons make us really want to replicate other behaviors. So when you see people yawning or something like that, normally kind of primes your brain. Those mirror neurons prime your brain to respond in the same fashion. It's the same reason why if you see somebody scoot up in a seat, you normally copy it. So yeah, it's actually why yawns are contagious. They are some of my favorite cells. Now, I don't know what you mean, does it impact the distance between synaptic gaps? Synaptic gaps generally stay relatively consistent because they need to be rather close together in order for that neurotransmitter to properly reach the other cell and transmit its signal. So I would say that there's probably slight differences, right, between probably even the synapses within the same person, right? But you're talking about really, really, really minuscule distances because like it's hard to explain, but they are so close together that they're basically touching. So it wouldn't be too different between individuals. Yes, mirror neurons do fire normally at just watching behavior. They fire when we have the same behavior done to, when we watch other people experience a thing and when we have the same thing happen to us. So yeah, if you're watching somebody on TV and they're yawning a lot, your mirror neurons are still going to respond to that and probably trigger you to yawn as well. Again, the main function of these mirror neurons, I know they're really cool, even though I don't cover them in this presentation, is really to kind of unify the social structure of a group. So normally, you know, we see people doing the same things we do, kind of promotes unity. So, you know, when you see somebody yawning, you yawning kind of showcases empathy and understanding. So they kind of just help with showcasing our social understanding. Again, a lot of people with antisocial or asocial behavior disorders normally do have problems in mirror neurons. But mirror neurons are also not just social. They do also serve a function in movement and stuff like that. Because again, if you are trying to run away from danger, and you need to climb a tree, and you watch somebody else successfully do it, being able to replicate that yourself is relatively useful. Well, the reason they probably don't copy all is that some movements are so complex and probably out of the way for you to do, right? Like a yawn or something is normally relatively straightforward. If somebody's doing jumping jacks, it's a little more complicated. So they probably are responding slightly to it, just not triggering you to do jumping jacks because it's probably more intense than it's really willing to respond to. Any other questions? It's funny that everyone wants to ask about mirror neurons, considering they weren't necessarily a type that he's going to bring up in this. Even though they are really cool. Yeah, exactly. Normally when we watch people eating, sleeping, doing stuff like that, you tend to want to copy it, right? Like if you see somebody eating, normally makes you hungry. If you see somebody doing a behavior, normally makes you want to do it. Yeah, exactly. Those are normally mirror neurons that fall for that. Okay, we're going to cover other cells that are not neurons now, as cool as they are. The other cells in the nervous system are referred to as glial cells, or as we like to call them, glia, which means glue in Greek. The reason we call these glue is because they serve support roles and connect our neurons together and allow them to do their job. So basically, they help in supporting neurons through regulating their external environments and regulating what can and cannot be near them in terms of like forming the blood-brain barrier. We'll go through some of them in the next few slides. This picture kind of showcases them all. So basically we have astrocytes. These make up about 75% of all glia in the CNS. They are very, very prominent, and they are attached to blood vessels, as shown in the image. They regulate the environment around neurons, managing glutamate levels, cysteine levels. They also manage a lot of electrolytes like potassium. They manage pH and water levels as well. Basically, they help to protect neurons from the damage that off levels of electrolytes and other things would cause, for instance, preventing cytotoxic damage from too much glutamate. They also protect the brain from pathogens by controlling what leaves the blood vessel that they are attached to. Basically, they make it so that only really, really small particles are able to get through those blood vessels and enter the brain. Things like oxygen that are really tiny can fit through, and actually so can caffeine and alcohol, and basically any thing that normally is considered an intoxicant is small enough to fit through this. But yeah, generally anything larger like a bacteria or a virus is not getting through that. The next ones, these are really, really cool. Some of my favorite glial cells is microglia. They are basically assassins in the CNS. They take up debris that comes from just normal metabolism, and they also clear out infections or anything that does actually manage to enter the brain from that blood-brain barrier. And in a healthy brain, they maintain homeostasis and are renewable by proliferation. Yeah, the problem with glial cell numbers is that it's highly, highly debated. Some studies do show as much as 10 times the amount of neurons, and some studies show that it's closer to maybe a 1-to-1 ratio. It also depends on the glial cell that you're referring to, because some glial cells are more abundant. For instance, astrocytes are 75% of glial cells. So some are more abundant than others, which might change, the ratios you're getting. From what I have heard in my own neuroscience classes, it's probably not as much as 10 times the amount. That's probably a big overestimate. But I also would probably say it's probably not as simple as a 1-to-1 ratio either. Probably somewhere in the middle, about like maybe 5 times the amount. I know it's hard to give an exact number because so many studies report conflicting information. So as I was saying, microglia are basically the white blood cells, so they can do phagocytosis. So here's a cool video of them doing phagocytosis and eating some of the bad stuff out of the brain. Okay, so now we have ependymal cells. These cells line the ventricles of your brain, which are big kind of holes that sit in it. And they move cerebrospinal fluid using cilia, those little tiny hairy projections that you can see in the image. And they produce central cerebrospinal fluid, which basically coats your brain and provides nourishment and protection against kind of damage from it rolling around. Right, you wouldn't really want too much shock damage happening to your brain because it causes what we know as a concussion. These help to soften just the hits your brain would take from regular movement. Okay, that's a good question. So when you have something like kind of a physical wound, there's a lot of things that go into healing it. So it's not necessarily vitamin K alone. Vitamin K really functions in terms of helping provide the proper clotting factors to allow your blood to clot and stop the bleeding. So it does play a big role in it. I would say that glial cells themselves probably don't play too much of a role because they're kind of too busy helping their neuron counterparts. But neurons probably do play a role in terms of sending signals, for instance, pain signals to certain areas of the body to allow you to stop using that limb or stop doing what you're doing. For instance, why are you cutting yourself, right? It's going to tell you to move away from whatever you're cutting yourself with. And they actually do play a big role in terms of doing things like constricting the blood vessels and stuff to stop further blood loss and damage. And also like promoting dilation of the blood vessels at some times to allow white blood cells to come in and clear up infection. So neurons do play a big role in healing, but they do play a big role in everything. So it's kind of to be said that they would also play a role in healing. So any other questions other than that one? Okay, so I think this is maybe our last cell. I might have another one after this, I'm not sure. But satellite cells are small glia that surround neurons basically outside of the central nervous system. So in the sensory ganglia in the autonomic nervous system. Now, it's okay if you don't know exactly what those mean, but basically these surround neurons that group into big bundles outside of the brain. They resemble the astrocytes seen in the CNS and regulate the external chemical environment the same way. Basically, kind of cupping those cells to prevent them from coming into contact with bad things. But they themselves normally are very sensitive to injury, and they can even exacerbate pathological pain, which is kind of an interesting concept when you think they're supposed to be protective. But yeah, you can see in this image here what a peripheral ganglia neuron looks like, and it's being covered in satellite cells. Okay, so I think these are the last two, because I told you guys I would explain what Schwann cells are later. So Schwann cells insulate the axons of neurons by wrapping them in that previously mentioned fatty substance known as myelin. Schwann cells basically are the ones that wrap neurons in the PNS, and they normally wrap one at a time, as shown in the image. Oligodendrocytes wrap around neurons in the CNS, and they normally wrap around two of them at a time, as shown in the image. So this is just a really cool image to, again, put together exactly everything you were talking about. in terms of you get to see a microglia scanning around the cell for any waste products or potential pathogens. You get to see an astrocyte connecting to it and protecting it, regulating its external environment. You see an oligodendrocyte forming that myelin sheath, and you get to see a neuron communicating with another neuron at a synapse. So I think this is a really cool image for showcasing just what it really looks like when all of these cells are put together. That's a good question. Yeah, I would say they kind of make myelin, and the myelin wraps around the axon. Basically, for oligodendrocytes specifically, as you can see in the image, it's kind of part of the cell itself is myelin. Like, it's basically the cytoplasmic part of the cell wrapping around this, and basically kind of producing that myelin and allowing it to be insulated. I don't necessarily know if poor myelination would cause seizures per se, because seizures are normally caused by overactivation of a lot of cells at the same time in multiple areas of the brain, normally triggering that. Normally, poor myelination results in symptoms of what we call multiple sclerosis, which is a disease that causes demyelination. People who suffer from this disease have trouble walking, have trouble doing most movements because the myelin isn't there to speed up that signal. So that signal gets really, really slow and would prevent them from doing a lot of movements, make it even sometimes hard to chew and breathe, and normally ends up resulting in death via your heart not getting the signal to beat fast enough. I would say that would actually probably be unlikely to cause seizures because it is slowing down signals. Like I said, seizures normally is too many signals. So I think it would actually probably help. I would maybe say that if it's in the wrong area of the brain, it maybe contribute to dysfunction and maybe the oversending of signals, but I'd say probably unlikely. Okay, so I know we kind of just hit our half an hour mark, but we do have a quick game here. We're gonna play a quick game of Hangman. Okay, so basically to give you guys a quick rundown, Hangman is basically a game where you're all gonna guess a letter. And if you guess the letter right, we move on to the next letter without drawing anything. If you guess the letter wrong, I can start drawing a man. If I finish drawing the man, then I have to give you what the answer is. I'll try and type up on the screen what my hint is going to be. You will get a hint for each question. So does anybody have any questions about how the game works before we begin? If not, then I'm going to start with the first question. So basically, all these questions are going to be one of the cells that I brought up in the presentation. Okay, so does anybody want to take a guess at a letter? Yeah, I guess you can consider this first one to be a trial. Yes, there is a G in here. So basically, I'm going to go here, if it'll let me, and put a G. And I do not proceed to go on. Yeah, okay, there is an M in here. If anybody else would like to guess, you can put it in the chat, or if you're okay with your voice being recorded, feel free to shout out your guess, but there is an M. Yes, good job, everybody. It is Microglia, even though I think I actually didn't put the right number of letters because I was trying to talk at the same time. But yeah, you guys got it right. It is Microglia. As I said, Microglia phagostatize up waste products and clear up any issues or infection in the central nervous system. Yeah, they basically maintain homeostasis and help keep everything tidy. So we're going to do another cell now, relatively quickly. I'm going to try to get the right number of letters this time. Okay. Sorry, it's a little uneven there. Okay. So does anybody else want to try taking a shot at potentially guessing a letter here? Give me a second to actually type up the thing so you guys can see what the hint is going to be.
Just to clarify, that is 2 words, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So I'm hoping you guys can see the hint here. So basically the hint is that these cells line the ventricle system of the CNS. So as you can see how many letters there are, these letters are, yeah, 2 words. Anybody want to take a shot? I'm glad to hear that you're loving this. Oh, okay. I was really thinking that there wasn't going to be an A, but there actually is an A. So you got lucky this time. And yes, there is an E. Oh, there is a P. You guys are good at this. Hold that thought. Is that supposed to be an I or an L? I can't necessarily tell.
An L.
Okay. There is an L. Yep, you guys guessed correctly. It is ependymal cells. As previously mentioned, ependymal cells do line the ventricle system of the brain and spinal cord, and they produce central cerebral spinal fluid, protecting the brain from damage. They also perform selective uptake of certain molecules like water and other things to protect the brain. Good job, everybody. So you do have one more. I know we are a little bit behind schedule. I know we started a couple minutes late too. So we'll try and see if you guys can be as fast with guessing this last one correctly. This one might be a tiny bit more difficult. Okay, let me make sure I did this right. Okay, and this is again going to be 2 words. Make the hint a little harder. All right, so here's your hint. They resemble astrocytes of the CNS and are quite sensitive to injury. Anybody want to take a guess to a letter? There is, in fact, an A. Yeah, there is actually, oops, 2 E's in this. I guess this. Yeah, there is a T. You guys are really good at this. Yeah, there is. So that's an I, there is an I, that's an L. There is also L's anyway, so yeah, I guess either would work. So yeah, we'll go with that's an L, and there is 2 L's. Yep, there is an S. Yep, exactly. These are satellite cells. The satellite cells are basically the astrocytes of the peripheral nervous system, basically wrapping around cells and sensory ganglia. And sensory ganglia, again, really quickly, is just a grouping of cells all together outside of the brain that normally respond to sensory signals. So these wrap around those cells, and they're very sensitive to injury, may even exacerbate pathological pain, but generally they function to regulate the external environment similar to astrocytes. So hopefully you guys learned some stuff about the different cells of the nervous system, and yeah, I can answer any other questions people have about any of these cells, either now or throughout the rest of the time we have together. And I'm a stop sharing the screen now. So yeah, also, if you do have any further questions, my email is listed on the slide, so that you can ask me any questions. I will try and check it, but yeah, that's normally the best way, I guess, to ask me a question after this, or you can ask throughout the rest of the presentation.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Brittany. I know I learned
Thank
a
you.
lot about the cells of the nervous system, and I hope you all did too. So next, we do have another presentation from Yulan, and this one's about the brain and gut connection. So how your mind and your gut are connected. And so I will switch over to her slides now. So I'll stop sharing. I think some people thought this was the end of the presentation, so but it is not. There's more. Okay. So I will begin sharing. Okay. There we go. Okay. So Yulan is a junior in high school, and she's interested in cognitive science. She hopes to study and pursue a career in related fields. She's been involved with SN since May of last year. Yulan is currently a content creator for BRC, and in her free time, she loves to do puzzles, play tennis, and read. And with that, whenever you are ready, Yulan.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Okay, so my workshop is going to be about the brain and the gut microbiome. So like questions like, how can a diet influence our brain and the way we think and feel? Honestly, you would be surprised at all the things your gut influences. Okay. So before we dive into what this gut-brain microbiome connection is, let's look at some background information on how this topic came to be. So over the past decade, research on this microbiota gut-brain axis has grown exponentially, has become a hot topic for scientists to study. And I'm saying different names for this connection because the scientific community does not have a solid set name for it since it's like a relatively new area of research. So basically what these scientists found is that our guts, brains, nervous systems, and behaviors are actually more connected than we previously thought. And the development of this has created a huge shift in medicine research. For example, like the development of new medicines like psychobiotics, which can be made up of beneficial bacteria or so-called probiotics that influence bacteria-brain relationships. And okay, I included this slide because here are some like the popular books about how gut health affects well-being. So if you want to like add them to your to be read list, if you feel free to do so. Yeah, the Hpa axis is a part of the gut-brain connection. I'll actually mention that later in one of the slides. So Yeah, and then, so now we have a brief understanding of the history of the gut-brain microbiome connection. Let's get started with understanding what it is. So the gut-brain microbiome connection is the causal effects of the gut microbiome on the brain and behavior, and researchers studying this connection focus on the molecular mechanisms that are behind it. In order to understand the mechanisms behind this connection, we have to review the 3 different systems involved individually, which are obviously the gut, the microbiome, and the brain. So let's start with the gut, which is our gastrointestinal tract. The right diagram shows all of the organs involved in our GI tract, the liver, stomach, esophagus, etc. And a fun fact about our gut is that it's actually the size of a small studio apartment, which is like 32 square meters. So that's pretty cool. So what does our gut do? Well, its primary function is digestion, absorption of nutrients, and excretion of waste. So when we eat, our gut helps us digest and take in nutrients from the food, which will give us the energy we need to survive. And how does it do this? The intestinal walls, along with microbes, absorb and interacts with the molecules we ingest, as shown in the diagram like below. And they take molecules of food, break them down, and turn them into chemicals, which is nutrients we need. And now we have a question for y'all to answer in the chat, and it's, what are the primary functions of the gut? There are 3. Yeah. Yes. That was fast. Good job. Okay. Yeah, those are the answers: digestion, the absorption of nutrients, and the excretion of waste. Okay, so we briefly mentioned microbes in the last slide, so now we'll talk about it. And what is the microbiome? It is made of trillions of microorganisms, or what we call microbes, and they consist of thousands of different species. They can be bacteria, fungi, parasites, and viruses. All these bugs, they actually coexist peacefully, and all these microorganisms live in all different parts of the body, but the gut has the largest numbers living in it. If you look at the diagram, there are some facts and graphics about the microbiome. For example, like we have the same number of cells in our body as bacteria, which is cool. So as mentioned before, the human microbiome is incredibly diverse. It is so big that we actually only know about half of them. It's really hard to study because of how small they are. The microbiome is kind of like the ocean, how we don't know much of it because it's so large. So now we know what the microbiome is made up of, but what does it do? The microbiome has key roles in promoting the daily functions of our body. In fact, it is labeled as a supporting organ, and it does this by stimulating the immune system, breaking down toxic food compounds, and synthesizing certain vitamins and amino acids. So on the left is a diagram listing all the functions of the microbiome. As you can see, the microbiome does not only influence the stomach, it influences almost all of our organs. And I think we have another question on the next slide. So what 4 types of microorganisms are in the microbiome? Yes, bacteria is one of them. Anyone have any guesses?
Should we reveal the answers?
Should we?
Should we?
Okay,
All right,
yeah.
let's see.
So it's fungi, parasite, and virus. That's the rest of it. Okay, so now we'll start focusing on the gut microbiome specifically. So the gut has the most microorganisms living in it compared to other organs. There is a symbiotic relationship between the bacteria and the GI tract. So the bacteria benefits from a nutrient-rich habitat in the GI tract, while in turn benefiting the host by making indigestible nutrients available to the body. Another question, okay, how does bacteria benefit the GI tract? Yep. Yes. Okay. Yeah, it makes indigestible nutrients available to us. Okay, now we have an understanding of the things involved in the gut-brain connection. We can finally dive into the nitty-gritty. So as we know, based on recent studies, scientists suggest that the gut microbiota affects aspects of our brain functions and behaviors. So what it is the gut-brain microbiome axis describes the two-way communication between the microbes of the GI tract and the brain. This axis plays a key role in maintenance of brain health. So on the right is a simple diagram of the gut-brain microbiome axis and all of the things it could affect, for example, social interaction, neurodevelopmental disorders, communication, etc. So the gut-brain microbiome axis can have effects on brain health because it can influence human behavior and affect the pathophysiology of mental illnesses. And there are 5 main systems involved in this axis: the central nervous system, which is CNS, the autonomic nervous system, which is split into the sympathetic and parasympathetic branches, which I know Brittany mentioned in her workshop, and the enteric nervous system, ENS, and immune system and endocrine system. I know I just mentioned this, but we have another question. What are the 5 systems involved in the communication with gut microbes? And you can just put down abbreviations, that's fine too. Yep. It's the ANS, ENS, CNS, immune, and endocrine systems. That was good. Good job. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So how does everything really work? How does the brain know how to communicate with the microbiome? Well, each of the 5 systems involved in communication interacts differently. And the diagram shown here outlines the routes of communication between the gut and the brain. As you can see, the light yellow shade is the upper part of the GI tract, which includes the esophagus and the stomach. The small intestine is shown in light blue and the large intestine in green. And in this diagram, the red lines represent the interactions between the GI tract and the autonomous and central nervous system. So the question you asked before about the Hpa axis, that's actually what the dark yellow is. The Hpa axis stands for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. It's directly and indirectly controlled by neuroactivity throughout the forebrain and brain stem. And this axis mainly regulates the body's response to stress. So it stimulates the endocrine cells to secrete cortisol, which is a primary stress hormone. But besides from stress, this Hpa axis is also involved in controlling digestion, the immune system, mood and emotional status, sexuality, and energy storage and expenditure. But unfortunately, irregular Hpa activity is associated with mental health disorders such as depression and schizophrenia, both of which are known to affect the microbiota composition. And now we will look at the communication between the microbiota, brain, the immune system, and the endocrine system. So the gut microbiome and the immune system affect each other by releasing cytokines and immune modulators, as you can see with the orange line. And shorty chain fatty acids and other microbial metabolites are produced by the gut and could also influence brain functions. And lastly, neurotransmitters are also involved in the two-way communication. And exactly how these systems interact is not clear to the scientific community, but experimental data suggests that the microbiota may send signals to the brain by activating afferent sensory neurons of the vagus nerve via neuroimmune and neuroendocrine pathways. Okay. So we have another question. What does the Hpa axis do? Or what does the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis do? That's related to brain and our mental health. Yep, that's right. And specifically, it regulates the body's response to stress. Yay! Okay. Now we will look at some interesting research findings on the gut-brain microbiome axis. First, this slide is all about research done on animals. And one study showed that mice with unbalanced microbiota showed anxiety-like behaviors, as you can see in the diagram below. And in a study of Parkinson's disease, which is a neurodegenerative disease common in elders that often cause uncontrollable tremors, the presence of gut microbiota promoted neuroinflammation, motor impairments, and asynuclein pathology. Okay. In another study of mice with autism-like symptoms, so these mice were housed with normal ones and ate their excrement, which is kind of disgusting. But anyways, their autism spectrum disorder behaviors actually disappeared after that. The scientists later found that the affected mice were missing a bacteria. I'm not gonna try to pronounce that, but after eating normal mice's excrement, they gained this bacteria and their symptoms disappeared. So now we'll move on to research actually done on humans. So epidemiologists researchers have found that many people with irritable bowel syndrome are depressed. People on the autism spectrum tend to have digestive problems, and people with Parkinson's are prone to constipation. And researchers found an increase in depression in people taking antibiotics, and these people were missing 2 key bacterial species. And in another study from 2011, researchers found that a 30-day course of probiotic bacteria led to decreased anxiety and depression in healthy volunteers. And so, as I've mentioned before, this is still a new field of study and requires more research. But what does the future look like for studying the gut-brain relationship? First, I want to point out that a lot of research in the field has been done on only animal models. So further exploration is needed to test the relevance of these findings on humans. And researchers know that they have not yet fully understood the pathways from microbes to the brain. So there will likely be much more research in the future. But what does this all mean for the medical field? Well, the regulation of the gut microbiome through diet could have essential benefits for preventing and treating brain-related disorders, which may prompt scientists to develop new psychotropic therapies. What we know now is that diet is an important factor to influence the gut microbiome, and short-term consumption of diets composed of animal or plant products rapidly changes structures of the microbial community, overwhelming inter-individual differences in microbial gene expression. But maybe one day we can analyze a patient's gut bacteria to treat her depression or other psychological disorders. Can intake of steroids lead to depression? I am not sure myself. I have to Google that, I think. But I would think so. But yeah, I'll look into that after.
I can attempt to give a kind of answer to that.
Yeah,
Steroids are composed of cholesterol, which would probably be diet as well. So the steroid hormones are made from cholesterol. They include things like testosterone and estrogen, and things like that that do have big impacts on mood. I would say that probably increased levels would probably I'd say probably lead to more aggression than depression. Like for instance, increased levels of testosterone are associated with high levels of aggressive behavior. I would say that it probably lead to more antisocial, more aggressive behavior. Same thing with estrogen spikes in females. But it probably would lead to depression. I wouldn't necessarily say that it couldn't, but I'd say, yeah, maybe probably more aggressive than depressive.
yeah. Okay, for my little game, we have a Jeopardy for you to play. So basically, if you don't know what Jeopardy is, it's a game where there are like, you can see it once and pull up the game. There are like different tiles associated with different amounts of money, and each of the tile has a question on it, and if you answer it right, then you get the money of how much the tile is worth. So we have, how many do we have here? We have 5 people, so I think we could just do, should we do teams or individuals?
Yeah, I think we can do teams, like one team of, should we have? Yeah,
What
yeah,
has-
like you said, 5 people.
Oh,
Okay, no longer.
okay, then we can just do 2.
Yeah, we can do, wait, isn't it?
Yeah, we can do 2 teams, I think.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so 2 teams of 2. So let me go back. Okay.
Oh no, we lost another one.
Oh, what the heck?
Does
Why does no
anyone-
one like Jeopardy? Well, do two of you want to be on one team and then one person can fly solo, or we can just do 3 teams of 1.
Of 3. That
Yeah.
should work.
Cool. Okay.
That would work too.
Okay, so all of you are on your own teams. If you want a specific character, you can put it in chat.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter too much, but there's a bunch of options. And I'll just randomly assign watermelon. Perfect. Okay. So yeah, so essentially we can you want to just want to call on each individual person to take turns.
No, you don't have to go to the website. I'll just call on people and you can choose which tile you want, and then Aaron will click on it and it'll show the question, and then you can just type it in the chat, type the answer in the chat, and then
Yeah,
if you
get
answer
the
it
answer,
right, then you
yeah.
then we would add your money. So who wants to go first? Or should I call on somebody?
Yeah, let me assign the characters to the people. So
Just to make sure everybody is clear, it's not playing for real money. It's fake money.
Yeah.
okay. Those are your assigned characters. So do you want to do pineapple first?
Pineapple, okay. Which tile do you want? You can type like 1, 300, or like 3, 100, and we'll know.
Yeah, so like choose a certain category. It doesn't really matter which one.
Yeah.
And then you choose a certain like monetary amount that you want to go for.
And these questions are not hard, so.
Yeah, if Abraham is not here, then we can move to Lila. I'm not the best at names, so hopefully that's right. So just type in chat, like you can do like 1-400, and then I'd click on the first category, go down to 400 and click on that question, and then you try to answer it. So whatever, Arsaket, do you want to attempt a question?
Be the first one.
Oh, okay, okay. Pineapple, let's go. Okay, so 2-400.
Okay, so mice with unbalanced microbiota showed what like behaviors? And 2 words. Well, 1 word, but there's a dash. And you can just type your answer in the chat.
And also kind of how Jeopardy works is that someone else can choose, or like someone else can answer, and then they, like whoever gets the answer correct first can then choose the question next.
Yeah.
But if no one knows, then we just move on. Does anyone have a guess?
Or
okay. How do you reveal the answer?
I think it says, yeah, it's anxiety like. Yay. Okay, so no one gets any money. That's so no.
Oh,
okay,
so sad.
That's so sad. Okay.
Okay.
Who is going next?
Do you want to just? Okay, we have. Okay, I think someone random just do like the category dash money, and then we can go from there.
Yeah. Anyone can.
3-200. Okay.
3-200. What other 4 types of microorganisms living in the gut? I think this was one of my questions in the slides. Yes, you get $200.
Nice. Okay, I think second was watermelon. Yay.
Yeah. Yay. Okay. Who's going next?
Okay, so Saket would choose a category and money. Again, since you got the answer correct.
Oh yeah, okay.
$1,300.
So the HPA axis mainly regulates the body's response to, yes,
Nice.
yeah,
Woo. Okay,
you are on
so
top of it.
let's
So
go.
was that 700? Is that 300?
300.
Yeah.
Okay, you can choose another category.
Three 100. What can be compared to the surface area of the gut? So this one is just like a fun one. It's like, you don't have to say the number.
And anyone can answer.
Yeah. To get the point. Yeah.
Dang, the number too.
Wow. I should give you extra.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you can choose another category.
Yeah.
Gonna do like 3 more questions ish.
Yeah, we'll do like 3 more.
Okay.
We're
1,400.
going for the- So
Big
irregular,
bucks.
what activity is associated with mental health disorders such as depression, schizophrenia? And you can use abbreviations.
Also, for the other two playing, you can also guess.
Yeah, you can get the point. Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah. Does anyone else have a guess?
Okay, let's see.
It is the HPA axis.
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah, even though no one gets money, we gained wealth and knowledge. Wow.
Yeah. Okay, wait, who gets to choose then?
It's like I can, or anyone can choose a category. Okay, let's go with 100.
Yeah. Okay, what is a new kind of medicine that emerged with the new studies on the relationship between the brain and the gut microbiome? So what is the name of?
Okay, 5, 4, you can do it. 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's see what it was.
It's psychobiotics.
Yay. Okay, one more. Does anyone want to choose the category?
I feel like we should tackle one in the 2 section.
True, yeah. Okay, maybe we can go with like, Elon, you choose.
Okay, let's do 300.
Okay.
Oh, this one's okay. The microbiome is made of how many microorganisms of thousands of different species? And you can choose like one of the words. Thousands, billions, or trillions.
Okay, so we have one guess for thousands. Any other guesses?
One guess. Any other?
Perhaps.
Oh, Brittany, I think you got
Yes.
it right. Yeah.
Let's go. Yeah. Okay.
That
was our Jeopardy game. That was very fun. I think there was a slight winner here, but
yeah.
we're all winners at heart because we learned something.
Yeah.
Thank you all for participating.
Oh yeah, and if you have any questions, you can email me or Erin.
Yes, yeah, I put my email up there as well, just in
Yeah.
case you all had any questions for me for some reason. But yes, so, oh, we have something in chat. Oh yeah, I think you can just look up, Yulan, do you have a LinkedIn?
Yeah, yes, I do. I will.
Cool. And I think you can just look up my name. I can type it in chat. I haven't been
Yeah,
active on LinkedIn in so long. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that's my name. I think if you just look it up, you'll find me. But yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I
Oh,
actually
that's so
found out
cool.
about this topic like when I was listening to a podcast too. And I was like,
Yep.
wait, that's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't
So
really think about it. And especially to
yeah,
the degree of how much they rely on each other.
yeah.
We have someone just now pulling up. Welcome.
Yeah, I
Welcome.
do not have a LinkedIn, but you can email me at this email. Or you can also search me up on Instagram or Facebook with my name, Brittany Alexander, and you can probably find me there if you'd like to connect with me there. But yeah, definitely was a really interesting topic I hadn't heard about before. I found the Parkinson's part really interesting that, alpha-synuclein differed based off of the gut microbiota, because I know that that's really a key player in what makes it so hard to treat. So I was surprised to see that you could actually morph that a little bit with gut.
Yeah. Well, I'll conclude the workshop and then so I can stop the recording and then we'll get to some more of the questions in chat. But thank you to both Yulan and Brittany for your amazing presentations. And that concludes our BRC Workshop Hour for today. We hope you enjoyed this session and learned a lot. And just so you know, this is an ongoing series of workshops. So stay tuned to the Simply Neuroscience Instagram for announcements regarding our next session. And if you have any questions, feel free once again to email us at the email addresses on screen. And Brittany, if you want to put your email in chat, that would be super helpful as well. And then, yeah, so thank you all so much for coming and hope to see you again soon. Thank you.